grab the northern lights. Baby, you just kick your feet up while I kick back. I roll one with you by my side.
Everyone, and welcome to another episode of Bold, Black, and Addicted to Bravo, because I am bold, Black, and addicted to Bravo. My name is Nyemade, and I'm so excited to have Emily and Quin joining me today for this episode. I'm going to let them both introduce themselves. We'll start with Emily.
Hello, everyone. I'm Emily, and I run the Instagram page, She Speaks Bravo, and I also have my own podcast, She Speaks Bravo. I've been a Bravo fan for over 20 years now, so I feel like I'm an expert. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining. And Quin?
I'm Quin Lamar. I am a comedian and actor, and I am one half of Know That, a Real Housewives podcast, and I have been a Bravo fan for about 3 years.
Awesome. So I'm so excited.
Get out.
I don't meet the requirement.
Get out.
Yes. I'm so excited to have them both joining us. So we're going to talk about specifically the cast of Summer House. I could find my words. The cast of Summer House had a really great conversation around the topic of race, which can sometimes go really left, as we saw with some of the housewives, and sometimes it can be really great, like we saw in Summer House. But before we get started, I always like to play a game or do like little trivia to get us all warmed up and knowing each other, except that we all know each other in this group now, and we've actually been gathering for half an hour before we even hit record. But,
was it that long? I talked to them.
But it is February, Valentine's, the month of love. So I'm going to ask some Valentine's Day trivia and Black History Month, which I've been doing, shameless plug, on my page. On Tuesday nights, I do mental health lives, and we had some really great lives regarding Black mental health and how mental health affects racism. This week, I'll be talking about Black love. So check them out on my Instagram.
Absolutely.
Good for you.
Yeah, they have been really good.
Thank you. All right. What percentage of flowers bought on Valentine's Day are red?
Are red?
Yeah.
Percentage, you said, right?
Yes.
Percentage of I'm going to go with 80%.
I'm going to go with closer to like 97.
69%.
Suck it.
I mean, I guess that makes sense. Not every woman.
I just think it's interesting that it's 69. It makes me feel like that's false.
Oh,
it's too perfect.
Wait a minute. You're right.
Right?
We need to get a second opinion.
Yeah, we'll have to look it up for real later.
We need some gays. Who owns flower shops?
Who was the creator of the first Valentine's Day box? I'll give a hint. Oh, maybe you don't need it.
Yeah. Oh my God, go.
This person also does a bunny. I think it's the bunny.
Russell Stover, right?
No.
Damn.
Kim Richards.
No.
No, actually, that would be Lisa Rinna.
Wrong bunny.
Lisa Rinna. Damn it.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Okay. Cadbury? Is it Cadbury?
Yes. Richard Cadbury. Okay. Yep. Do you know what the meaning of X and O is in X and O?
I think X is kisses and O is hugs.
Yes.
I think.
Were you thinking the same thing?
Tracks.
We're killing it.
But I acted like I did.
That works.
Once you said it was right, Quin was like, "Oh, that's what I was going to say."
I went to state college, people. That's how you get through.
I did too for 2 years, 2 whole years. And then I went back to LA to be a star. And look at me now.
Look at you now.
A star.
You're a star to me, Emily.
Oh, thanks.
Too bad it's like the 60s. That 2-year degree would be all you need.
What percentage of people who buy flowers of gift on February 14th are women?
Ooh, who buy the flowers are okay. 50%.
I'd say 30.
Okay.
27%.
Oh, you got it.
That's
nice.
Okay. Price is right, Lynn. I'll take
it. Who receives the most cards on Valentine's Day?
Meaning like men or women?
No, just I guess to say professions to narrow it down for you.
Professions.
It just said who, but the answer is a profession. So
Okay. Teachers.
yes.
That's a good, that's a good guess. Yeah.
Because all their students.
Giving cards. Oh, I forgot about that. Oh God, they really found a way to really throw away parents' money, don't they? Yep. I forgot about that. I need candy.
Which mythological god is the symbol of Valentine?
Cupid?
Yes.
Demigod, but okay.
I mean, if we're gonna bump him up to God,
who is his mother?
Aphrodite.
No, Venus.
Oh, I would have never.
Because it's Roman. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and Aphrodite's Greek, right? That's the thing is like I know them, Greek. But I'm like, wait, which one's Roman? Which one's Greek? Like
I forgot until right now that there were Roman and Greek gods.
Because I'm trying to hopefully that means colonialism is weakening.
Yes.
I'm trying to think. So cute. Aphrodite also has a son, but it's what is it? Eros? I think it's Eros.
Oh yeah.
Eros is the Greek Cupid.
Yes, it is, because I just watched that season of Below Deck, and Eros was the name of the ship because of a Greek god. Okay, well done.
Nice. All right, last question. Who declared the 14th February as the holiday of Saint Valentine Day? Saint Valentine's Day.
The Pope.
No.
I'm
gonna say FDR just because. Why not?
Winston Churchill.
King Henry VII.
Oh, I would have said that. That was my next guess.
She looked at me like, you idiot. It was way, way older than me.
Sometimes I can't control my face.
I have that
she was
problem.
Like, you big dummy.
No, I was just surprised that you guessed someone so recent. But yeah, I mean, it does make sense. Holidays have been more of a recent thing.
Yeah. I didn't think about it being. I thought about it like a federal holiday, which it is not.
Yeah.
Right? Oh my God, thank God it's not.
Super Bowl.
It's President's Day today.
Should be a holiday.
So...
Super Bowl Monday should be a holiday. I needed a full day to rewatch that halftime show.
Yeah.
I got no work done.
I know that I'm surprised it's not a holiday in Texas.
Right.
So, because they friggin' love football down there. It was difficult to get out of that state being as big and black as I was without being drafted.
Oh, I bet. Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
They like
what else are you going to do?
I was almost this size at 14 in ninth grade. So like I remember when I transferred there, my mother like transferred her job. So we went to the school. I went to school in Texas, and literally the principal, when I came in their role, he was like, "You play football?" And I was like, "I did like some little league and whatever." And he was like, "I think the coach is gonna want to see you." And I was like, "Okay." You didn't ask if I wanted to play, but he just said that. And then literally the coach pulled me out of class during one of my classes. It was like, made me this whole pitch, told me about how much fun they had, parties and everything. Ooh, and more than that,
shut up.
Got the head cheerleader, varsity cheerleader, to show me around. So at the end of all my classes, she came out to show me where to go. Ooh. I was like, well,
you could have been
her name was Casey, and she was hot. It was crazy. And then I was like, he pulled me out at the end of the school day. It was like maybe a half hour left of my last class. And he was like, "Yeah, you can just go home." I was like, "Oh, okay."
See, all of that, they would have roped me in. I definitely.
They would have roped me in too.
100%.
I would be like, I'm down.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm signing up. I've never been cool until now, and I'm in.
Yep.
It was wild. But anyway, so it should be a holiday down in Texas, at least.
It should. Well, so like I was saying, for this episode, we are talking about a conversation that they had on Housewives, Summer House.
I almost said Winter House, so you better than me.
At least we're in the house range. So Maya is one of the newer girls on the show. She's fabulous. I think she gets along really well with everybody, which I enjoy. But she's been having kind of a hard time fitting in. Part of it is I think she's a little more introverted than everybody else is, and she likes to stay in. But she's also had like Andrea teasing her a little bit about her name, or calling her Sierra, who's the only other Black girl in the house. So he's been interchanging their names a little bit. And
then he straight up called her a different name, called her Lexi.
Something completely different. So actually,
Lexi, who he said was his ex. I think.
I was like
something like that. Yeah. And so then both of the women talked about how they, I've sort of grown up being the only Black face or only having like one other Black face in the area, and how it like impacts them and being in those spaces. And that definitely rung true with me, because that was my childhood. Like if you look up any pictures of me through my childhood and teen years, it was like me would maybe if my family was there, there'd be another Black face. My graduating class had like over 400 people, and like 3 or 4 of us were Black. So I definitely like what they said resonated with me.
Same for you, Quin, as you said that?
Yeah, I grew up, I had a very like weird thing. I was born like in Detroit, and like my first like kindergarten, I remember being in a predominantly Black class, and then my parents moved to the suburbs, and then it went from that literally in the middle of the year to me being like the only Black kid in my class. And and it was like that all through elementary school and middle school up until like high school, and then things kind of mixed in a little bit more there. But so yeah, I totally understood that. And I get, in the past I had criticized Sierra for not really saying anything, because I was like, because I'll be watching it with my husband Donnie, I'll be like, I know this is an issue for her, and I don't know why she doesn't talk about it, because I know this is an issue. And then I was like, but she's beautiful, which doesn't change anything, but that might make it a little easier for her to not, she stands out because she's so beautiful. So I was like, maybe that's kind of a thing, but I was just like, I don't know why she doesn't. And it made me look at her a little, as a Black person, like, well, you should be having this conversation. But then when she explained why she didn't, and seeing the difference when she had somebody else in the house that could support her, I was like, I understand that a lot better now.
Yeah, it's hard to do it when you're on your own, especially. I know for me, a lot of the things that I now realize were wrong, like jokes we would make or things we would say, I didn't realize back then, because that was just the world that I grew up in. And it's like, you're not around racist people. You know what I mean? Like people aren't just pitchforks on the lawn racist, but like you don't realize all the microaggressions. And the thing is, and I think I have a little bit more compassion because I grew up around it. Like, I know they don't realize it either. Like they're doing it without realizing that it's a microaggression, because we've lived in society that has for so long said those things are okay. Like if your whole life you've been okay telling someone that, oh, you speak so well, you're so articulate, which is what I've grown up with. And then now all of a sudden we're like, well, that's actually kind of insulting to all Black people. You know what I mean? Like, so then it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't really, so I get the flusteredness of it with the change. But we can definitely see the difference between how the housewives, and I'll insert a clip in through this, or either here or at the end. Emily did a great job of helping me make some side-by-side comparing those, but comparing how some of the housewives reacted to being corrected versus how like the summer house group reacted. And Emily, I hope I'm right. Did you recently have someone on your episode where you talked about this a little bit? Was that your show? And she was talking about how sometimes it's hard when you're the only one to really bring it up. Right?
Especially since my friend Pia came on my podcast, and she said, I'm more like Sierra in that I grew up in a predominantly white environment and learned how to make uncomfortable situations comfortable. And I wouldn't have wanted to bring it up because it sort of points a finger at the one thing you're super insecure about. So if you bring it up, then everyone's going to talk about it, and then you're exploding your insecurities for everyone to see. So she said it made complete sense to me that until Maya was there, she wouldn't have felt comfortable saying anything. And then she could also feel Sierra's relief that she could finally talk about, like that whole last year. And actually up until right now, I've been not talking about how uncomfortable it can be. And Quin, when you said that you had gone to a school that was like a mix, predominantly Black, and then going to a school that's predominantly white, it made me think of when I was up until middle school, I don't think I had one Black person in my class. And that is I didn't even think about that until I was like, what would it be like to switch? Because my core memories with like interacting with kids starts more in high school. And I got really fortunate. I went to a school in LA called Immaculate Heart. And fun tip, I went to high school with Meghan Markle, aka the Duchess of whatever.
Oh, nice.
You know who she is from Suits.
Well done.
Yes,
I really like that. but it was a private Catholic school, which sounds like, oh, it's going to be really uptight and really like white, but it was like a beautiful mixture of every single culture, and we would all have lunch together, which is unheard of. But I remember in the middle of junior year being like, I can't believe this is really high school for us. Like, this isn't how any other high school is, you guys. And I know that I got a very specific and small version of what it's like for anyone of color to experience living and dealing in a predominantly white environment. I know that I got a huge mix and it was really cool and liberal, but that's not the norm. So it wasn't until this conversation became so normalized that I was like, oh my God, Black people feel left out. I had no idea until like maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And so I definitely am still learning, but I was like, of course they do.
It's like being left out of a game you're forced to play.
Yeah.
And that's like the big problem with it. Like, if I could just go somewhere and I was like, oh, I don't have to deal with white people anymore, fine. But that's not the way it works. And that's why I was so mad that white people are now going to space so they can lay the ground of bad reputation for us. It's like there is no escape from it. For me growing up, it was like one of my first memories is like being in my like first grade class, I think, and we were like playing around. I had a really fun teacher, and we were like doing like this like fairy tale thing because like she would like read us stories and everything. And I was like, we were doing this stuff, and I was like, oh, I'll be the prince. And like everybody was like, you can't be the prince. And I was like, well, why? And it was like, this little redhead piece of shit was like, black. I will never forget him. I will never forget him. I will never forget his face when he said that to me. And everybody was like pretty much, and I remember this girl who was like this little blonde girl who was depressed. So she seemed kind of whatever about it. But they were like, no, it's not going to happen. So now I was like, And then Disney's like reinforced that over the years.
Oh, yeah.
But I was like, Whenever I think about how Disney doesn't have that representation, I go right back to that moment and I know exactly why.
You have the
so it went from
ginger 10-year-old.
I have it like right that ginger.
And of course he was a ginger.
Mark Ramsey. So I'll never, like literally from first grade, I will never forget his name. I literally picked on him the rest of the year. Like I literally class clown. He was the target of my class clowning. Because when you're a kid as a comedian, you kind of like, it's almost like kind of like having a superpower. You have to learn, and it comes out mean a lot because you focus it. But anyway, he was the focus, and I'm not ashamed of that. Anyway,
you shouldn't be.
He was a weak white. He was a redhead. So that was like, he was the hobbling gazelle.
I love gingers, but that's because I always like secretly wanted to be Ariel when I was younger.
You wanted to be Ariel? How cute.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't want to swim all the time?
Yeah.
I wanted to be Sleeping Beauty.
She's like, I need a nap. But basically what I was saying was it went from that and then to being like in middle school where being Black became like popular. So then like I became cool because I was Black. And it kind of went on that way. But how I dealt with it was the opposite of the woman you were talking about, where I constantly pointed out that I was Black. And it kind of like, and I made like jokes about it, and now I make a living doing it basically. But that's how I've always dealt with the awkwardness of being the only one. I just pointed out.
Yeah.
So
I think for me, it was a mix of both, like not wanting to overly point it out, but also like I wanted to fit in, but I was also always hyper aware that I didn't quite fit in. So then I would try to like lean into ways that I could fit in like a really positive way, you know, like it was almost like in my mind, like if they're going to talk about me anyways, I want to make sure it's associated with good things because I like do all the clubs and I get the good grades and I'm super, you know what I mean? So it was like, I worked so hard to like overcompensate for that. And because also like
Oprah approach.
Yeah. To be like the one who
above reproach.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was it was something that was constantly on my mind, and it like now I think about it and feel like a little bit ashamed, but it was almost like at that time like a sense of pride in being like you're not like other Black people, like that I didn't fit under their umbrella of what they thought of other Black people because I was so, you know, all of those other things that I worked hard on being. And it's because we really do live in like a country and a society that makes us, you know, see whiteness is right. So like the more white you behave, the better you are. So whether it's the way you speak or the way you act, your mannerisms, And because of that, that's how I also got like the Oreo joke, the you're black on the outside, white on the inside,
Oh,
which I
I
used
never
to
got
laugh at
that.
too. Like I was like, oh, it's so funny. Now I'm like, hey, why
Yeah.
why is only whiteness excellent? Like I can be fully black
yeah.
and still be
And
excellent. I
yeah.
can be intelligent. I can do all of those things, and it doesn't make me not black. And associating only blackness with the things that you think are bad is
Yes.
insulting on the other side of it too. So it's like now I've worked past that, and I still constantly educate myself, but definitely back then it was like just really trying to always not be or seen as like the stereotype. And then also there was a girl, one other girl, well, there's two others, but I didn't really talk to the one. And there was another girl named Courtney, and she hated me.
Oh, Courtney just sounds like a bitch.
Hated me. And I think it's because, and
I don't like her.
And I think I kind of get like where Mia was coming from, because people would like interchange our names because we were in the same grade and in the same house. So like they'd call, you know, her Nyemade, me, Courtney, like back and forth. And she hated it. And I get it because I was chunkier too. I'm not as chunky as I am now, but she was like skinny, tiny. And you know how it is when you're
Oh,
the
so okay.
girl. So it's like, oh no, I'm not the fat black girl. I'm the other one. So and she was like, she'd just be really mean. And I remember this one time, so rude. We were in English class and she touched my hair and she's like, ew, greasy. And then the whole class laughed at me. And I'd like to say I'm over that memory, but I'm not, because it's funny because I didn't always feel like now I feel kind of a sisterhood in blackness, right? Like, hey girl, hey sis, hey whatever. I didn't really feel it back then, but like in that moment, I felt the betrayal of the sisterhood. You know what I mean? Like, even though I didn't feel like I was the type of person who thought there was one, because we didn't really get along, but it was like, girl, you know, our hair is different. You know, we have to grease it up. And now you're like putting it out there and then making it seem like I'm doing something bad. Like I felt that, like, that betrayal of the sisterhood.
I hate Courtney.
I hate her too. I hope her hair is dry and brittle.
I bet it is.
For me, like there were two black people when I got to be like maybe in the third grade that we all ended up like actually like around each other. And I'm actually still friends with one of them. It was a guy. And then there was this one girl, Bethany, who was probably like my first like big crush. She was like super smart. She was like you, like she did everything right. She was super smart. She was beautiful. I was really into her. And she ended up being like promoted because she was so like smart. So then she was like away from us. But me and the guy, we still kind of became friends, but I went the opposite way. Like I was like the class clown. I was always the one who stood out in that way. And Donnie and I were watching Sister Act because he needed to like watch it for his show. I'm the cute one.
One or two?
The first one.
Okay.
And I was like, there's the part where she like gets in trouble and she has to do all those like chores. And I was like, oh my God, that was me in school. Like that was always me after class, me having to write, me having to go to the principal.
Really?
Me having to do like literally it was something every single day. But it would be like, you know, my teachers would like literally like sometimes like be like holding back laughter and be like,
oh, I
bet.
bet.
To go to the principal's office. But it was like that was positive feedback for me. And I stood out in that way and I just kept going. So like I knew like people who did it the way you did, who were like, you know, I'm gonna be prim and proper and I'm gonna be all that. I also didn't get Oreo because if somebody called me an Oreo, then I was in a real black area. Like this, we're talking like this is some real shit, or maybe the South. Because my parents, we were raised in the burbs, and my parents were like, when I got home and closed the door, it was Detroit all day. My mother, as I've said, was like the leader of a gang in Detroit in the 70s. My parents were very Detroit. Oh yeah, my mother is a former gang leader, not member, leader.
I'm sorry.
My father.
I said it so casually, like, oh.
This explains so much.
Yeah, so like my mother was very, I don't say rough. You have to keep in mind, like in my family, I ain't considered a flaming homosexual. Like that is, I mean, but seriously, I'm just being honest. Like my family is very, you know, and I'm the only openly queer man in my family. So when I used to go to school, like my mother would like punch me in the shoulder, like, you know, have a good day, little nigga. Like it was like that kind of vibe. She was very tough with me.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wait, what gang?
I never had that.
What were they called?
I think it was called the Bishops. It was a female version of a male gang where her
Mm.
boyfriend was the leader of that.
Like the
He's
T-birds,
not
the
my
pink ladies.
father. He's not my father. As far as I know, he's still in jail.
Like the T-bird. Ooh, okay.
Okay.
My mother had like all of my mother's ex-boyfriends before my father are like all either still in jail or dead and have been dead for a while. So it's
Wow.
like,
I feel like I
but
need
she
to have your
became a
mother
nurse.
on and talk to
I
her
was gonna
about some
say,
things.
yeah, we need
She
to
became-
interview her.
My father, like, he wanted to be a professional basketball player. That didn't work out for him. He met my mother. She was getting her life together, going to nursing school and everything, and they decided to have us and work their way up
I
and live
love
in the
that
burbs. So I
journey.
Yeah.
had a very weird a very weird juxtaposition of lives, because I had like white friends who had like really white families, like WASP people, and then like here's my mother getting into it with somebody's father saying like, if I had it, it could be bigger than yours, bitch.
Yeah.
Like that kind of,
And
and I'm like,
trying to
oh, my mother's
balance
here to
both.
pick me up.
Yeah.
Did
So
your
it's
did
like,
your mom ever go to like parent teacher things and like get into a fight with
because
the
I was
parent?
always in trouble.
Oh
No,
yeah,
she
of
always
course.
sided with my teachers. She always sided with my teachers because she knew I was wrong.
That's what they
So
do.
it was like one of those things where, yeah, my mother knew.
Mhm.
So it was just like she give me that look that, just be
The
like,
snarl.
Yeah.
the
Well, it's
snarl.
interesting trying to find your fit in there too, because like I had outside where I was, in suburbia. And it's interesting that you mentioned only hearing that Oreo when you're in like very black areas, because I've heard it both ways. I've heard it,
I
it's
believe
usually
that.
as a compliment from white people, like, oh, you're like
Oh
Oreo.
yeah.
And then it's usually an insult from black people, like, you Oreo. So it can go either way depending on who is saying
Different
it.
line deliveries.
Yeah, with a different line delivery. But yeah, it was interesting because at home, because I was born in Liberia. So like you went home to Detroit, I went home to Liberia.
Liberian girl.
So I stepped through the doors and we were back in Africa. There was like, actually though, I do have to say, especially because I've had more conversations with other children of immigrants, like my mom was actually really liberal compared to what other
Oh, really?
parents deal with. Yeah. And I didn't realize that. And it makes me so grateful.
That's
to her,
true.
like, how
I
much
can
she
tell
tried.
actually.
Yeah.
I can actually tell
that she
but
was.
my parents coming from the projects, they basically were immigrants in the world we were living in too. That was a world that was completely not accessible to them. They had no idea they would ever end up there. They had no idea what to do. They couldn't have been any more out of water had they been from another country, because like dealing with the schools and dealing with our neighbors and stuff like that. I mean, it's different, of course, but
yeah, no,
it's
completely different.
The class divide was, yeah.
And it's hard because it's like people move their families from like the city to the suburbs, because like what do we all hear? Like, oh, if you want your kids to have better school, if you want them to have better chances, move them to the suburbs. But then we're plopped into the suburbs, we're around all these people who don't look like us, who don't, necessarily get where we're from. And then as children, it's like, do you want to stand in? Do you want to like stand out? Which we just said, like, we both went different ways with that. And I know for me too, it created like a complex for me later, because I do work hard at stuff. And so like and I'm great at communicating, right? Hence the podcast. But so like I would always get picked to like speak for stuff, or like we had to do like announcements, and I would get picked for all these things. So I grew up thinking like, yeah, I'm the shit, And then later, like when I sort of like left that world and actually started more like educating myself on like Blackness and like stuff in this culture, because I was one of those people who would be like, oh, I'm Black, they're Black, they should just work harder, just because that's literally the mentality of the area I grew up around. And it wasn't even like to be hateful. It's just like people, and I'm not going to speak for like all white people or all people in the suburbs, but for the most part, the mentality when they see people in the inner cities and people struggling is that they need to work harder, because that's what we've been told. And unless they take the time to really educate themselves on the differences in opportunities and the differences in resources, that's just what they're going to think. So I was really kind of that mindset. So then when I started to educate myself and realize how wrong I was, it also made me realize and made me wonder, like, well, was I so great at these things, or was I just like their diversity token person? Like, maybe I'm not the shit at communicating. Maybe I was just communicating well enough to like, was I their affirmative action person? Do you know what I mean? Like, so it really made me like doubt like my greatness, which we're back. I'm great. To that conclusion, but I really did go through a period like in my 20s. I was like, nah, I'm actually not that great. I'm same on par with everyone else. I just thought I was great because they were putting me up front.
Interesting.
That argument to me, I understand it, but like affirmative action or like getting into schools and stuff, that stuff doesn't do your homework for you, and it doesn't do your work for you.
Oh yeah, I'm
like,
so
yeah,
about.
no.
Yeah, no, I'm so about affirmative action. I actually now get annoyed when people complain about affirmative action.
Yeah.
Like they like when you have affirmative action, the way I always explain it is like you have 10 slots, right? So like let's say you have 10 slots and they've said because minorities haven't been getting it before, they have 3. You have to give 3 of them to minorities. And so then when those minorities get in, people are like, oh, you're just here because of affirmative action. But the truth is they had to beat out everyone else to get one of those 3 spots. So you have your top 7 against their top 3. Like they are literally the best. Like the other people in line are probably not even as good as the people that got in.
Not
and
probably, usually not.
Yeah, I was being nice, but usually they're not because you literally have to be the best of the best to get 1 in 3 slots versus 1 in 7 slots.
At this age, being
Right?
over 30, I have to honestly say that when I see a white person do something well, I am shocked. I am shocked and surprised to see. I'm dead ass, especially in work.
Totally.
I am like surprised, like, wow, didn't expect that. Good for you. Because this so much of my life has been seeing people who don't deserve their jobs, their positions. It's just like whatever. Like look at the administration we had in the White House before this. Like that has literally been my experience with people. Like there's no reason for you to be here other than the same reason you feel like I shouldn't be here. It's just because of your race. So it's like this is a real like funny for you to be saying something like that. Like this whole thing with like we shouldn't pick a Supreme Court justice because of her race. Really? Then why did you pick Amy Coney Island? You clearly picked her because because of her race.
Yeah.
And the black woman that we're going to get is going to be 10 times as qualified.
Yep.
But they're still going to say that. So it's just,
right. And I feel like they don't think
that.
about that when they start to like say like, oh, well, there isn't really a problem with diversity and black people. Like you have Oprah, you have the president. I'm like, if the example you have to show is that there's no racism, the president, like a black person becoming president or becoming a billionaire are like the only examples you can think of black greatness. Like, yes, there is a problem. There
is a problem.
There is
especially people had that mentality like Obama was president. What more do they want? Like, because that's it.
That's it.
More.
All the problems.
More Obamas. I want like 4 Obamas.
Like so that didn't do enough, guys. And Obama dealt with so much racism, he couldn't even pass one thing without it being a problem. So stop.
Right. Just because he got there doesn't mean it was easy.
Yeah, let's ask him how that racism was when he was actually the president. See if he was like, it was gone. I was elected president. There was no racism.
No more racism. Well, it's also frustrating too, because I feel like so often when we try to, like, there's just no winning, right? So when we try to express that, hey, there's a racism problem, hey, there's issues, it's like, well, don't do this, don't protest, don't do that. Like, get the jobs, get in power, make the change from within. Then the minute they get the powers, get inside and they're like, hey guys, just here to tell you racism's still a problem. Then it's like, why are you talking about, you know what I mean? It's like
you made it. How can you say there's a problem?
Exactly. It's like, well, you made it to where you are. So clearly there isn't really a problem. It's like, no, I fought to get where I am. Like anytime Obama mentioned anything remotely race related, it's like, oh, he's race baiting, or it's like, no, he's telling you about a problem. He worked hard to get there so he could tell you about the problem.
White people are so afraid of the word racism. Yes. It's like, let's be more afraid of being racist.
Yes. Yeah. Well, Emily, I wanted to ask you too, as the token white person of this conversation. Thank you.
Finally some representation.
Finally. So I know that sometimes it can be hard because, like I said, I had to go through my period of like unlearning and relearning some things. And sometimes I get like embarrassed that I would say certain things or that I didn't know certain things. Like, do you feel that when certain things get brought up? Because I mean, I think it's great that we're in a space where like the conversation with Mayans here, because I feel like a few years ago that conversation wouldn't have happened, you know, because I mean, even Danielle, she's been on the show for years. She said she felt uncomfortable, but has never felt comfortable saying anything. So like when you hear things like that, like, are you internally more like the summer house people, or does it like ruffle you a little bit at first? Like we saw some of the Beverly Hills people, does it make you defensive?
Not in any way, shape, or form. I am of the mindset that it's up to me to educate myself, not up to any person of color to do it. But when we get the opportunity to hear from a woman or man of color about the struggle, I it's like getting a free lesson that that I don't have to go out and seek, because I already go out and seek it. But if you're going to tell me, which is not your job to do so, I'm so excited to hear it. And I'll even get comments sometimes on my posts on Instagram, and it'll be like, sometimes it's just a troll, but I want to make sure I know I can have a blind spot, because I am white and I simply am going to have blind spots. So I'll post the comment in question in my stories and say, I'm aware that it's possible I have a blind spot. So can someone just let me know if I'm missing something? I've been fortunate that 90% of the time, it's pretty much like, that's just a troll trying to pick a fight in your comment thread. But I've learned the other 10% of the time, something I never knew before. And I'm never afraid of it, because take the education while I can. I already feel, I guess guilt is the right word, for the years of just being unaware. And that's my privilege. My privilege of being unaware is a privilege of being unaware. You didn't have that option. And so I think back, I'm like, oh my God, you guys, we went to school with that one Black person in class, and I didn't even think about it, because we applauded them for fitting in. And like,
yeah,
it just, there were so many things that were wrong, like commercials about like, Brink's home security. Who was breaking into the house in the commercial? A Black person. Now it's so funny. We see a white person breaking in, and it's like, ooh, groundbreaking. There was a moment on that show, Whose Line Is It Anyway? And it was Wayne Brady and the other people. And they had to like do those things where they get into a formation and they make something up, and then they just keep going. The scene keeps going. And it was Wayne Brady, the tall guy, and another white guy. And the joke was, which one's the guilty one? And it was supposed to be obviously the Black guy. And that was normal. Yeah. Wayne Brady and Aisha Tyler did comment. They're like, you know how fucked up that is, right, you guys? That's not cool. But we just glossed right over it. There was no mention of it again. And we just kept it moving, because it's very capitalist mentality, like work harder and just get there on your own. We're not going to help you at all. And if you make it cool, if you don't, well, it's just, you're being lazy. So all of that really ties into, wanting to learn and grow. So the beautiful thing about Summer House, I had just I blocked out RHONY. I really did. But when I went back to get footage, the scene at Luann's home in the Hamptons, when she calls Ebony angry, and then the follow-up conversation, I forgot how horrible it was. Luann expecting an apology. And when she's asked to explain, what do you need an apology for? She's like, you getting upset with me for something I didn't understand. I'm like, so you want an apology for you not understanding and saying something that upset me, but you want me to apologize because I was upset with you. That makes no fucking sense. Nope. And then I recorded Beverly Hills, where they had the conversation where Kathy's like, Michael Jackson says, I don't see color. So then therefore, that's probably what all Black people feel, right? I'm like, yeah, Michael Jackson is so similar to most other Black people. Right. Come on now. So Garcelle having to say, well, no, we're not all equal. And stupid ass Story being like, why? We should be. Yeah. And then Crystal having to go, well, bitch, it's not about that. We're talking about how it is. Shut up. Yeah. Have you not been reading the news?
That's a huge part of it. And that's something I always say that one of my life-changing moments was reading excerpts from Letters from a Birmingham Jail by MLK. Only because I've always been one of those people who are like, I've had thoughts and things that I wanted to say, but it was very hard for me to speak up because I just don't want to make people upset or angry or insult people. And, in the letters, he talks about like some of the biggest problem to our plight are the people who want, calmness and peace over justice and equality. And it's true. And I think that there's a lot of people who say things like, I don't see color, or we should all be equal. And it's not that they are racist overtly, but it's that they're not seeing how like those things aren't going to happen until we flesh out the other things. And just by pretending like everything's okay, it doesn't work. And even like not seeing color, that doesn't work, because you should see color. The purpose isn't to not see color, because when we don't see color, we go right back to thinking white is right. You want to see color, but you want to see that all color in its differentness is equal and it all matters and it's all okay.
And let's not, as white people, let's not be afraid of not understanding another person's experience.
Yes.
Let's be okay going, oh, I don't get that. And I'm never going to get that. There was actually a South Park episode about this where, were you guys South Park fans ever?
A little bit, yeah.
Yes.
The episode where Stan's dad goes on Wheel of Fortune and he has to guess the puzzle and it's N with the blank space GGER.
Yeah.
He says the N word, but then Token, whose name is Token, is offended. And the whole thing is Stan learning the lesson. He goes, Token, I finally get it. I don't get it.
Yeah.
And then Token says, you finally get it, Stan. That's the lesson for us.
Yeah,
exactly. Because white people, everything is ours. We just assume that's mine. So if I don't get it, it doesn't exist.
Yeah,
we can just not get it, and it still exists.
The funny thing about that, though, I married somebody who said two things that were red flags to me, and you can judge me because I married him anyway. The two red flags that he said were, "I don't see color," and "My mother's my best friend." Now, those both presented problems later on that I did not foresee. The "I don't see color" part. Oh, and then there's a third one. "I don't know about religion. I love Jesus and Jesus loves me." That was the trifecta that Donnie hit me with. God bless.
Wow.
Go, Donnie.
And so, in Donnie's reality, that's the way he was. And like his family, like his dad, like everybody was so open-minded. Everybody was so non-racist without any practical application of it. And then I came, and then we had some friction
without any practical application of it. That was a great way to put it.
That's so valid, because people a lot of times don't realize that very liberal people are also a problem as well, because like you said, they're in theory, not application.
It's easy to be liberal if you don't have any black people.
Yeah, once application happens, it reverts back to the biases we all have ingrained.
Exactly. I loved Dorit until black people got around her, and I'm like, oh well, damn, like you are not. I mean, and let me tell you, I loved Dorit Kim.
Yeah,
loved her. Still think she's gorgeous. There's still things I like about her, but I was really hardcore for her. Then I was like, oh, I can't like you anymore.
Yeah,
and I think that's the way it is. What was difficult with Donnie was that Donnie, to him, race wasn't an issue, and that was his privilege. And it was difficult to try to. Now we're in a place where he'll like call me, and like if let's say we're leaving out of the house, he'll be like, "The police are at the subway station, so I want you to be careful." Now he's like completely in the other side of it.
Sad. Because, it's wonderful and sad.
It's sad and
it's
sad because he realizes
he sees it. It's sad that that's our reality.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, now you're a bit oppressed too. And like, that is sad, but he understands it now. He's seen like, people treat me differently for no reason. Like he's seen it, and he's seen how what that reality is like living with me as a black person. And it was a long way. And we had a lot of fights about it because it was just him not knowing and him not understanding.
And I find often before they understand.
I will never do it again. I'll never do it again. God forbid, knock wood, if anything happens with my marriage, you'll not see me with a white again.
I was gonna say, the thing is too, like that makes it a problem is that when you try to point out those things that their privilege allows them to miss,
they get defensive, or like they act like it's all in your head. It's all in your head, like that they were really just being nice. And then if you're the type of person who really, because I really try to not pull the race card. So I'm like, is what I'm experiencing really racial, or is it just that they don't like me, or is it just this other thing? And when I've landed at it's racial in that moment, then I'm expressing how I feel. So then to be met with, it probably wasn't that. You're like, well, was it not that? And then you're trying to gaslight yourself on the situation. Like,
I bet.
Yes, like it becomes very frustrating.
Even like not to make this about me, a white woman, but even in work, when it being just a woman, that's frustrating. When I see mediocre white men as my boss making triple what I make, being horrible, having to be in a meeting for 30 minutes talking about how they're going to be working later. Meanwhile, I've been in the meeting texting people, making 70 things happen. We come out of that meeting and they're like, let's get to work. I'm like, I literally already did it all, but hey, keep going, guys. Go back into your stupid meeting. If I ever were to complain about that in the history of my work, it would always be like, I think that's just in your head. It's a very that the feeling of being dismissed like that. And then I got completely trained to think it was all in my head. Everything was in my head. When I finally left the restaurant business, I was like, that wasn't in my head. That was absolutely toxic and horrible.
Yeah.
But and you get the perspective out here. I was like, ew, you guys were totally disgusting and I should sue you.
Right. Yeah. No, but I love that example because I always feel like if anyone should understand us, it should be women. And like when white women especially don't, I'm like, but how do you not? And I'm glad that I'm able to use the thing with men as an example, but it also frustrates me that some people don't get it until you do. You know what I mean? Like I've had conversations with people about like privilege and them like not understanding like white privilege isn't a thing. And I'm like, it doesn't mean that your life is easier. It just means that there are certain things that you don't have to worry about because of your race. And I was like, okay, so you're a woman, right? When you walk into a room with a man, the fact that they instantly think the man is the boss is a male privilege that they have. Like the fact that they'll instantly take his word above yours simply because he's a man is a male privilege. Is that necessarily making his life so much easier and making it that he doesn't have struggles? No. But is it one less thing he has to worry about? Yes. Same thing with black and whiteness, you know, like same thing. Like, it doesn't mean that your life is like rosy, but it means that there's certain things that your race allows you to not get. And I just don't understand. Some people can understand it with men and female, but can't understand it with race.
When it comes to that, like you would think that white women would understand the same way I would think that white gays would understand, but they don't. Yeah, like totally. I've seen white gays and white women work with a racist white man because they want to date them and like try to like move that goal. And I'm like, yeah, like how important is it for you to be with a white man if you have to go through all these hoops to find one that's not a piece of shit? Not that there's not good white men out there. I'm just saying. But you would think you would get that. And I've always thought that white women and black men have a very special relationship because of how specifically our bodies are used by white men in different ways. And I don't think it's a coincidence where if there's ever a genie, it's always a hot white woman or a big black man. That's not a coincidence.
Ooh, I just got chills. That was great.
It's true. Like it's who white men feel should serve them.
Yeah.
And I've always felt like there's, and not to mention the way that white women and black men in certain ways can also propagate white supremacy because of the places that we hold and keep black women down at the same way. Like there's so many layers to see where you come out and how you fit into the design. Like nobody tells you just get some paper shoved in your hand and get shoved into white supremacy, and you just kind of like read your script and you go about it until you realize what part you play. I would like there to be commonality. I would like us to be like, okay, so this is how one of the biggest eye-opening moments for me was I have a Native American friend and we were out hanging out. He's also gay. And someone like called him Geronimo jokingly. And I was like, well, that's not cool. And so we had this whole big thing, and he like opened up about like how it bothers him so much. And like I've hung out with him and I'll be like, oh, I'm the only black person here. He's like, well, I'm the only wherever I go, I'm the only one I am. And I'm like, damn. And then it's like, you know, stuff like that. And like I mistakenly called him Indian one time. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I was like, but from the time I was born, that is what you were communicated to me to be. Right. And it's just like having that, like, I was like, this is how white people feel. And it was like that kind of like,
it doesn't feel comfortable.
It doesn't feel comfortable. It's difficult to have that conversation with him. Black people have more of a voice than Indigenous people do. And because of that, we have a privilege that they don't have. And then that's also kind of a weird mind thing that I'm like, think about it. If they had all those sports teams named after us, not quickly, we would get that done by lunch. That would be done. It would not be the Mississippi Mammies. No, it would not be that anymore. But look at how hard it would.
Imagine what the mascot would have.
Oh my goodness.
And Jemima. Right. But it's like that for them to like be fighting so hard and going through so much for that, or how long. It's like, you know, it's like the Stop Asian Hate. They had that litigation passed too sweet. It was like, boom. Yep. And then it's like, that is the hierarchy of the oppression in this country. Wow. That's all you need to know.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, like you said, it's not always comfortable having those conversations on any side of it.
I feel like shit.
Yeah. So I try to have like a little bit of empathy towards it, like recognizing that you don't know what you don't know, right? And so until someone comes to you, it's kind of like back in the day when we all used to say like, that's so gay, or this person's so like, stop being retarded. Like those are awful. And I cringe at the fact that like we all just
said it so much.
Said it so much.
Used to say it.
And like until we were like, hey, this isn't okay. We didn't know it wasn't okay. Right. And I know that people love in their hindsight to be like, you should have known, but we didn't know. And there's so many things like culturally that are acceptable that should not have been. Like there are some things where it's like, all right, you should have known. But there's a lot of things where it's just like, as a culture, that's just what was acceptable. And I know it's harder now for the older generation. I think we see that a little bit when we look at the Housewives versus Summer House.
Summer House, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a little bit harder for the older generation to take that criticism.
Really hard for them.
To be told that what they thought their whole life was incorrect. And so they're not as open to it. And they also tend to think that we're weaker. Us and Generation Z are weaker for being more politically correct and more understanding, but we're just not assholes on the same levels. Like, sorry, and not sorry, you know?
There's also way more experience like now. Like if you look at like what those people saw growing up, they watched like Leave It to Beaver. They watched, there were no Black people on their blocks. There were no Black people in their schools. There were no Black people on TV. And growing up from where we did is like, 80s, 90s babies, even if you didn't have it in your school or in your block, you had it on TV like once or a couple of times a week. You got to see what a Black family was like. You had Urkel, you had Sister, you had these Black families that you can kind of like, okay, have a connection to in some way. Yeah. And that's why a lot of Black people have connections with white people, because Black people don't live with white people either. But they're so bombarded with white culture, they learn to identify with them. They learn to see themselves. Before I can remember, you know why so many Black people love Sandra Bullock? Because Sandra Bullock was a brunette in a world of blondes. She was the other, and Black people gravitate to the other. Any heavyweight person, anybody who's like brown and kind of other looking, you'll usually find the Black people, especially in the 80s and 90s, loved them. Like so many Black people love Ricky Lake just because.
Yeah.
Like this was somebody breaking in who wasn't supposed to be there.
Yeah.
And so, you were going to say?
No, go ahead.
No, so like for me, like that's like a really big deal. And I think that affects like what we see in Summer House. Like, first of all, Summer House is already more diverse than most housewife shows. You have Alex, who also I was upset that they didn't let Alex deal with that racism that he encountered. Because that wasn't a microaggression. That was flat out racism that got called out racism.
Yeah.
And that would have been a lot more interesting than him talking about turkey. So I'm like, well, why didn't we show this? Why didn't we see this?
Yeah.
And a lot of that needs to be seen. Like, white supremacy affects everybody non-white and white for that matter. So it's like that would have given it's so weird that they would leave that out. And then we have this conversation with Maya and Sierra. Like, no, this is a problem. Multiple people deal with this. So, and I think that them being younger, them being a more diverse cast, I think all of that contributed to them having this conversation, despite Paige being there.
Don't talk about Paige. I love Paige.
I thought she did good. No, did she not?
She did do good. I'm talking about her past. I'm talking about her past.
I forgot. Oh, wait, I can't remember. What had happened with her again?
Apparently, her and Hannah had this thing where they said some inappropriate things.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm not going to completely throw Paige away because I honestly love Paige. Yeah. And before I knew she did it, like, she was my favorite character on Summer House, like, instantly. Yeah. But also that's kind of because she was, Danielle was there. I just don't like Danielle. But she was an other to me.
Yeah, definitely. And hopefully she learns from that. So I think that's privilege and age as well. And the thing
definitely
is,
revamped her image.
Isn't a problem.
Tight with Sierra.
Yeah, it's not a problem as long as you can acknowledge that you have it and try to grow from it. It's like when people try to pretend like, oh, I don't have a privilege. Oh, this isn't different. It's like, yes, it is. And it's not necessarily your fault. And I think that people don't like that guilty feeling, which is why we see critical race theory being taught in schools, just plain and flat out facts about Black history being taken out of school because it might make people feel uncomfortable. But like, you need to feel uncomfortable because that's how you learn. I did want to talk about something interesting with the Summer House thing, though, is I was pleasantly surprised by Kyle's reaction, because I don't know if you remember, but when Maya was talking, Luke kind of tried to slip in there, and he tried to pull like Ramona Dorit kind of thing, where he's like, well, it was uncomfortable for me as well when I came 2 years ago. And it's like, that's not what we're talking about here, dude. So A, I want to know your thoughts on him doing that. And then B, I want to mention that I was really proud of the way Kyle brought it back and like kept it in the moment and kept to focus, because that happens a lot. We're like, hey, here's our struggle. And someone's like, oh, I suffered too.
I was
Luke
so
is a
mad at
self-centered
Luke for that.
fuckboy.
He was just so in his own. He's like, Maya had just, by the way, said it's a different experience with me as a Black person. She said Black like 5 times. And Luke goes, this is a good time for me to chime in.
Yeah.
I also struggled, you guys. It took me, but here's the thing. I think he thought he was going to say something like, wow, it was hard for me and I'm not even Black. But then he messed it up and was like, took me 2 years to make friendships with you guys. And it felt like he was just invalidating what she was talking
That's
about.
how I felt too. Yeah.
And I was like, because then Maya like kind of nodded and was like, yeah, okay. As if she felt like she needed just to let her stuff go because he was talking about how it just took me 2 years.
That's what we're used to.
I'm
happen.
Friends.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But thank God Kyle saw that and went, I think though, I'm going to stop you, Luke. I think what they're saying is we don't get it.
And it's almost more powerful that it was Kyle, because, and I say this all the time, like you need to be sort of in the inner circle to really make the difference, right? So like if somebody doesn't respect Black people, a Black person then telling them to respect them isn't going to help. If someone doesn't respect fat people, a fat person telling them to respect them isn't going to help because they don't care about you. But when someone who is at a level where they do respect say the same thing, there's a better chance of it coming in. So I think that yes, Maya or Sierra could have said, well, Luke, this is what we really meant. But they had just very well said exactly what they meant. And he still interpreted and tried to say it however he wanted to say it to be part of the conversation. So I think it was needed for Kyle to be the person to kind of check him and bring it back.
I've been a fan of Kyle for a while. I'm not a fan of how he treats Amanda all the time. But then again,
That's how Amanda treats Kyle.
Separately as a person,
right?
Kyle.
So, but as a person, he's a good time. He's not, go to summer house Heidi, but he's got a nice butt. There's a lot of things he has going for him.
Yeah,
I'm cool with Kyle, and I like that he did that too. Luke, in my opinion, he strikes me as somebody who would do exactly what he did, and if you press him far enough, he'll bring up the fact that he's dated Black people before, and. Totally. That was the vibe that I got from him. Like, I can't be racist. Like, he's a Nordic from the Midwest.
Right.
Come on. Like, I know that kind of guy. Like, it's, and like you were saying about when people comment on your post, Emily, being a white person who feels I've heard enough or I've learned enough, I'm above reproach. That's when you start violating. There is no done for you because society doesn't stop throwing privilege on you. It doesn't stop showering you with, praise for doing nothing or whatever. It's like you just showed up. It's like all that Tom Brady stuff. He's not the best quarterback. They don't let Black men do that enough. Like, there's no way he's the best quarterback. He's just white and he's here. And that's something that people need to recognize. So don't stop learning. Don't stop. You're never above reproach on that. And Luke looks like somebody who thinks that, oh, I get it, and now I'm done.
Yeah, like I have peace, so it's
and
fine. I'm not racist, so racism doesn't exist.
The best, I thought that like Andrea really surprised me too. I actually,
considering he was so thoughtless.
Yeah.
Well, because when she on the beach, he was like, I mean, it was an accident. Like he gave her that like, oh, relax. But when he saw the impact, he did not get defensive. A la Dorit, a la any one of the housewives so far. He just cried and said, I'm so sorry. I definitely get one track minded because I know them, but never again. I am changing. Yeah. They were not defensive. And I started crying because I had just been re-traumatized by watching RHONY and Beverly Hills. Cause I was like, I forgot how bad this was. Too. It's like, I forgot how bad it was.
Crazy.
I didn't, Nyemade. Maybe I'll pull that for you.
That whole thing, which, and I've said this, I'll say this to the day, all that they do not understand racism. That whole thing between Leanne and Carrie, that was not racism. Carrie is a woman who presents white. That was the big problem with me, considering especially how they handled Brandy and her real racism.
Yeah,
it was crazy to me. So
couldn't
yeah,
get
they
through
don't
Orange
handle
County,
it.
or I couldn't get through
Dallas.
Dallas. But yeah, that clip would be good because I know they talked about it a lot.
They just
And I think that also having more than one, because Bravo has tried to like diversify their cast a little bit, but I think they did it in such a wrong way where they just plop a Black person in
One
each
person.
they need
cast.
to
There you go.
diversify
All
people
by
in
yourself.
production. They need to diversify
They
production
need,
as well.
yes, they
And
need to
Behind the
high
camera
up
and in
in
front.
the network. High up in the
Yep.
network,
Yes.
we need more diversity because then this won't fucking happen.
Yeah, and I think just having someone who helps, like that conversation happen, because like I said, Danielle said she always felt that way, never talked about it. Sierra didn't. It wasn't until Maya came, and yes, you need someone brave enough to talk about it with you, but just to make you feel comfortable and more seen. Not that, you know, all Black people, we're not a monolith, we're different, but you can still make the environment more comfortable for them. And I think that even some of the conversations they had on Beverly Hills this year was because Crystal was there to help have those conversations, even though Sutton tried to, you know, bring it back to her. But I think that it also made Garcelle feel more comfortable as well to talk about it also from her
You even
viewpoint.
see Garcelle like look at Crystal, like she kind of, because Crystal's sitting next to Dorit and she's so relieved that Crystal can chime in and say, I know what you're trying to say, Dorit, but that's not how it is.
Yeah.
Like, what a relief.
Yeah. So I definitely hope that Bravo tries to add more. I didn't watch Below Deck but I've heard that there was a racism issue as well, because there was only like, I guess, one Black girl and there's words used. So, you know, it's always going to happen. And it's always weird to me, especially when we were watching New York, when people would say things like, I watch these shows for entertainment, not for all the serious stuff. It's like,
stop it.
You know the topics we talk about on these shows? Like, what is entertaining?
Luann was arrested.
What's entertaining about these divorces? What's entertaining? Like, yes, it's entertaining in like a horrible way, but like, it's still real life stuff. And unfortunately, so is racism. Just because you can watch a couple where one person cheats on another person and basically ruins their lives, dragging them through court for years, and you find it entertaining because it doesn't make you personally feel bad, doesn't make it any less real than when someone talks about racism, but that does make you feel bad. It's just,
I need to go off on something real quick now that we're here. Okay, I need to go off on something about RHONY. Okay. Not one time did they mention to Luann, your privilege you do not understand what it's like to be stuck in the system. She said she was stuck in the system on numerous occasions. No, you weren't, Luann. And not once at the reunion did they even say it. They've allowed her to act like she struggled. She was in the drunk tank, got a lawyer, and violated her probation multiple times. And nothing happened. You have no fucking idea. Yeah. You should be in jail. And if you really knew what it was like, her arrest tape, okay, not once did she say, thank God I'm white. Because if I had been a Black woman doing what I did, I would have been beat down.
Yep.
Beat down.
And the charges would have been astronomical. They wouldn't have dropped anything. Okay. So please.
And the bail would have been insane. I was just reading something. There's a 14-year-old girl who was, it sounds so stupid, but they say that she tried to hire someone to kill her boyfriend. Because I guess she like said something online, but she didn't exchange money or anything, you know, like they normally do with these things, but they arrested her and they have her in jail with a bond of like $75,000.
Okay.
You know, their family cannot afford that. And I think people also don't realize how many people are in jail who haven't even had their court date yet. They haven't even been proven guilty or innocent, but the bail system is so
fucked up.
And then the timing it takes to get to court, like sometimes people are in jail for years before they even have their court date.
And they just can't afford to get out. That is so disgusting. Oh yeah. So I'm so mad that RHONY not one time. And remember Luann spoke at like the Fortune Society thing. Her and Sonia. They were the only white people there. It was all Black people who had served like 15 years.
Yeah.
And Luann, who was in for one day, is talking to them about what it's like to be on the bottom and pull yourself out of it. Yeah. I said, do you realize you're talking to someone who was in there for like 20 plus years? You have no idea what that's like.
Nope.
It was mortifying.
Producers think that's funny. The producers find stuff like that funny because they're like, oh, they think like, it's kind of like how Dave Chappelle said he stopped doing the Chappelle Show because people stopped getting it. And he has that problem a lot, I believe. I believe he's trying to do something else, but people take it in such a way that it makes it worse, to the point where he should probably just not talk about it.
Yeah.
And that's why he said he stepped away from the Chappelle Show. And I think that originally, or in a lot of ways, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to highlight the ridiculousness of her doing that. But instead, they're just giving this white woman a platform to do this bullshit.
Yeah.
And of course, Luann is one of those people who has no self-awareness.
No,
she
she's so narcissistic.
Like she doesn't
she
get
thinks
that
she's
the joke's
Liza
on
Minnelli.
her. Right. Yeah.
She doesn't. She just sees it as a pat on the back. And that is just infuriating.
Yeah. It's hard to watch. And I think it's hard for anyone to watch what they feel is like mediocrity, like rising. And it's one of the things that I find like frustrating with reality TV is like, because on one level, I love it, right? Like it's entertaining, it's all this stuff. And on this other level, it's like, but we're giving all these idiots these platforms, these money, like these abilities. Where
look at Vanderpump Rules.
I was just going to say, like, Vanderpump Rules
people.
These people,
the Southern Charm people, like
Southern Charm people,
are so off now, and it's just like for what?
2.
For being
for being bad. They failed upwards.
They failed upwards. It's so frustrating to watch.
It's not even great reality. It's like, I'm not saying that I didn't watch Vanderpump Rules, so I don't know exactly how good the reality TV is. But as far as like, if you want to go, for me, the Mount Rushmore of reality TV is Tammy from Real World, Nene Leakes, Miss Juicy, New York Tiffany Pollard. Like, these are people, and maybe I can't remember her name for Bad Girls Club. These are people who kind of defined each one of the genres that they were in. Yeah. And it's like, when I look at this other stuff, like, I guess we have to
and Morgan from just throwing a white girl also. Morgan from Rich Kids of Beverly Hills, because she transitioned from being on that show to being on E, and she's like one of the few who's like actually, I feel like, has tried to work kind of like the other women you mentioned.
And that's great. And, you know, there's also, I'm not saying there's not any white people who did it. There's Big Ange. I would give one to Lindsay Hubbs. Love me some Lindsay Hubbs. Like, there's people who've done the work. But, like, when you look at it, as somebody who didn't watch Vanderpump Rules and looking at it and, like, going in at season 2, and I'm like, wait, what did they do to get this house? And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, they have this level of money. And then, like, I watched, like, one of the first episodes. I was like, they went from that to this?
Yeah. Yep. Just because of the show. It's like when the Southern Charm guys were talking, because the women, they were had one of the reunions, and it was like Chelsea and Madison were saying how they still work and they still have goals and stuff, and the guys were like, you work because you have to, because we really don't have to. But like, that's the truth. They make enough from the TV show that they really can just do nothing, and we all judge them for doing nothing. But like, if you don't have real goals for doing anything greater, they make enough money doing their shows where they can just chill. And they do. Incredible. And it's frustrating to watch.
Only in America.
The men of Southern Charm are 100% the most toxic on Bravo.
Absolutely.
I miss Southern Charm New Orleans so much. Just, I had to throw that out there. I miss New Orleans. So, did you ever watch it?
Yeah.
I watched an episode of it.
I New Orleans. Yeah.
Oh, I loved it.
I did.
Well,
I've watched it through twice.
I've loved talking to you guys today. I know we were kind of all over the place, and somewhere in here, I'm going to put the clips either in the beginning or after, just so you guys can see really the comparison between the two. But I, wanted to once again, just want to applaud the Summer House crew for taking that conversation and having it so well. Even though it's also upsetting that like, we're all like, oh my gosh, they handled that conversation well. Like, we're also like, wow, impressed. And that's a really low bar. I feel like it's like when dads hang out with their kids and we're like, oh my gosh, that's so impressive. It's like, well, you should be hanging out with your kids.
Did you see him tie that kid's shoe? What a great dad.
Yeah. And I feel like it's kind of the same thing. It's like, well, you should be able to have a conversation. But unfortunately, we've seen so many examples where they can't have that conversation that I think it's worth taking a moment to say, like, good job, guys.
Yeah. No, great job.
I agree. It was very well done. I was surprised. And I had been kind of, it gave me a better idea of who Maya was, because like I didn't really, know much about her. I remember, I think I might have said like, why is she even there? Like, she should be on something else. I didn't think she fit. And then to see that actually talked about, I'm like, well, good for her. And good for her to actually, for being like the person to bring this to light and talk about this. I appreciated getting to see another side of Alex. I think the whole conversation was a really good win.
It was
for Sierra and Maya, who were both spelled like the singers.
Yes, I agree. I agree. And I'm sure it made some people feel uncomfortable, but hopefully they were okay seeing other people be uncomfortable and accepting that uncomfortableness and taking ownership of how they can grow from that.
Exactly. I cried. I cried
Did
multiple
you?
times. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, when you watch Summer House, you kind of watch it because it is a little bit lighter than
Yeah.
Housewives. Housewives
It
is, you know, Housewives is a lot. So
it's like politics.
Yes.
And Summer House is like sports.
Yeah.
That's a great way to compare it. It's so, but I definitely cried. I cried when because Sierra just started crying right at the top of it. Like just the thought of bringing it up. And so that's when I was like, and now I'm crying too. And so I was just crying happy tears. And then Luke talked and I was like, Luke, you better shut up. And then Kyle fixed it.
Yeah.
And then they ended with the big group hug and they all felt so inclusive. And they realized when Kyle said, if you're uncomfortable, we should all be uncomfortable.
Yes. I was like,
chills.
Kyle, I mean, hey.
Kyle was listening, like the look on his face. He was listening. As soon as he realized the topic of the conversation, he was like, we're in it. And he wasn't going anywhere.
And it felt genuine too. It didn't feel like they were just saying it. Because I do feel like
I've met so many guys like Kyle.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes it's like just saying what they should say, but it felt like they were genuinely listening.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
It was very well done. And I'm happy that I saw it. I'm happy that they had the conversation. And yeah, like Summer House is not really what you would think what you would go to for something like this real. And I didn't know that I needed it. But like, you know, it was handled very well. And much like I said about white people, I was very surprised. It was like,
it really showed too that they're friends on Summer House. Like on Southern Charm, it's questionable. On Vanderpump Rules, sometimes it's questionable, even though I know they are.
I mean, they're
friends,
all
they hang out.
Yeah.
But on Summer House, they are friends. They may fight and bicker here and there, but they are friends. And Kyle and Lindsay are a really good anchor because they've been doing it since day one. And Lindsay at the last reunion, when they were dealing with Hannah, she said, you have to remember, this was a show about friends going to the Hamptons to summer. And so you can tell that Kyle and Lindsay still feel like that's what this is about.
Yeah. And this summer, it's felt like that, with the exception of Alex. The rest of it feels like friends hanging out. Like Alex and Luke honestly could go.
Luke, bye, Luke. I'm like, why are you still here? He just gives go girl, give us nothing.
Yes. Well,
I mean, he is going to have family stuff though.
Yeah, true.
Better.
Well, I'm happy to have that conversation. I'm happy you both have joined me. This has been fun. It will be loaded on YouTube and on all the podcast stations. And before we go, though, Emily, do you want to tell them where they can find you?
That is a microaggression.
I apologize.
Emily is going to be found on She Speaks Bravo on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok, but literally it's the exact same stuff I post on Instagram. So just follow one or the other, or else I'll be embarrassed. Literally, there's no difference. I'm on Twitter, but I never go on there. But podcast wise, I'm everywhere you can get your podcasts. And thank you. Perfect. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining.
And as for me, you can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at the Quin Lamar. It's all the same, basically. And let's see, on Know That, which you can listen to anywhere you get your podcast. I have a new show I'm starting called The Messy Show, which will be premiering soon. So I'll let you all know about that. That'll be.
Is it a podcast?
Of course. It's a podcast with me and another comedian, so that'll be really fun. And
I'm excited.
The 27th. Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. And the 27th of this month for Black History Month, I'm doing a funk soul virtual event, which is for Black History Month. And it's about wellness. And it's going to be on Sunday, February 27th. And I think it's kind of an all-day thing. So you can drop in for different parts. There's an artist one, which remembers Andre Leontali. And then there's like all these other different things like about mental health and a whole thing. So
that's also my birthday. So
happy early birthday.
Thank you. So I will definitely jump in and be like, everyone wish me a happy birthday. It's about me.
It's about me. Like a true Pisces.
Exactly.
No, Aries.
If you missed any previous episodes, Pisces. Definitely check them out.
Is it Pisces?
Yeah.
Yes.
I love Aries
Pisces.
Is after.
I didn't even realize it until very recently that like my life is filled with a lot of Pisces, Sagittarius, and some Virgos. Like,
oh, me too. Weird.
Yeah.
Weird. Those three. That's
I'm a
so
Libra.
Funny.
I'm a Libra.
Oh, I love Libras.
Oh, I usually don't love Libras.
Really? Oh, I'm lovable. So
I love you though. I do love you.
She
though.
said
I
I'm
have like one
lovable.
other Libra friend. I have one other Libra friend.
Okay.
yeah.
I'm a
no, but-
Leo
You would be a
With
no
Leo.
mane.
You
Yeah.
are so Leo.
with no mane.
I
I
personally
do actually
love
get along
Leos.
with a few Leos. Guy Leos, though. Girl Leos is sometimes,
I agree.
but like
Same.
guy
Same.
Leos.
Same,
and I
same,
get
same.
along
I have
really
no
well.
fire in my chart, so I
Mm.
love a Leo energy because
Yeah.
I looks like I'm like, yeah, burn
You're
me
all
up.
water and air.
I'm
I'm
all
all
water and
air.
air.
I'm,
Oh, you are?
You're
I'm
all
Libra
air.
Sun, Gemini Moon, and
Gemini
Aquarius Rising.
moon. I'm Aquarius rising.
Yeah, see, I love it.
Gemini
Wow, so
moon. That's interesting.
That's you are kind of wild, aren't you?
I am. Oh, and
Um,
I'm on a cusp. If you believe in the cusp, I'm a Scorpio cusp, so I'm just all over the place.
Oh, I love
freak.
I am a
Freak.
it.
Freak.
I'm
Let me
just
see, I'm
all
a
over the
Leo.
place.
My rising is Sagittarius.
Oh, fire.
and
Mm.
Sagittarius.
I think my moon is Taurus.
Ooh, I love that you have an Earth moon.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm
What
a
are-
Capricorn moon,
Okay. Nice.
which is, I hate it. My chart, like, because my dad actually studied astrology and was like a total hippie, and now he's like an accountant, which is such a funny, but numbers. It's all
still
about like
numbers.
calculations.
It
Yeah.
is.
So I grew up with my dad doing a full chart reading, and like even when I left home, he'd randomly call me and be like, "Have you been feeling off?" Yeah, because this is going through your third house, which
That's so
controls this and
Californian.
Saturn.
It's
I
kinda
know,
cool,
right?
though. I love knowledgeable people. Like, and I
Me
know
too.
this sounds cheesy, but I got it from Legally Blonde. Like, once I realized that like everybody's kind of knowledgeable in something, like it makes people. I mean, not everybody. Some people aren't, and I just.
Some people don't know anything.
But most people, like, whether it's like super knowledgeable in fashion or in like the earth stuff, or like, I just love knowledge and like tapping into like what someone is knowledgeable into with, and then getting them to talk about it is like my favorite thing.
Oh yeah, no, my dad literally has books. Like he doesn't even like to use computers to do a chart. Like he pulls out a book and he like is doing a pen and paper calculation to do
So
my
cool.
chart.
Wow.
Yeah. I am basically the most sensitive person you could possibly be. Like when you look at my chart, it's like, so this means you are the most sensitive person and live in a cocoon of feelings. I'm like, that sounds about
That
right.
sounds about right. Yeah.
Sounds about right.
I did.
All right. Well, thank you again so much for joining us. I'll include the links for everybody below, and find us on Instagram. We're all over the place as well. Well, have a great
Alrighty.
day, everyone.
Bye.
See ya.
You just kick your feet up while I kick back. I roll one with you by my side.